This is a production of World Video Bible School. To God be the glory.
As we continue our study of the life and times of Marshall Keeble, I know it's the desire of every gospel preacher to see his children obey the gospel, his grandchildren obey the gospel, and even his great-great-grandchildren obey the gospel, and on down the line. We're privileged today to have with us his great-great-granddaughter, Gwen Cummings, who's married to Clinton, and she's going to tell us some things about Marshall Keeble. First of all, Gwen, where did you go to school?
I went to the Nashville Christian Institute, better known as NCI, and I was in the last graduating class, and my mother was in the first class to graduate.
Okay, that's great. Now, here's a man, Marshall, who wanted to influence people with that school so that they would be Christians and could live a good Christian life and get a good education. And so you're one of those that was influenced by his dream, and that's great. Now let me ask you this. In becoming a Christian, what part did Marshall play in your life relative to that?
He was just my grandfather, and he was just a Christian man. What you saw in the pulpit was exactly the way he was at home. There was never any difference. You know, the same Christian man that people would come up to seek autographs or to get advice from, the sincerity was the same person we saw at home.
Now, you lived with him a while, didn't you?
A long time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What was it like to be in the home of Laura and Marshall Keeble?
Well, they were my grandparents, and I just loved staying with them because they kind of like spoiled you, but he was so funny, so warm, and he was always interested in what we were doing. You know, I wanted to know about what we were doing, what we had to say, what we thought, and he liked to joke a lot, you know, but he didn't like you to watch certain things on television, even back then. Like, I used to like Westerns, and he, when it got to be real good, he would toddle over to the television and just turn it off. And he'd say to me, Gwen, I can't let you watch that because before I know it, you'll be shooting Mama and I. That was my grandmother. And it would just irritate me. And he loved the Red Skelton show. So when it got real good, I would go right over to the television and turn it off. And I'd tell him, Papa, but before I know it, you'll be standing up in the chair with one foot up, holding the umbrella like Red Skelton. And that would just tickle me. We'd have a lot of fun out of that.
Yeah. What would you say probably is the greatest memory you've got of Marshall?
He always wanted to be at home, especially during the holidays. And every Christmas he was at home, and he'd make Christmas so special. The whole family would come together, and we would assemble around the fireplace, and he would lead prayer, and he would talk to us. And that was just, because I would think, you know, he's gone so much, but he made time to be home at Christmas and at the holidays.
What was it like when he was gone? Did you stay with Sister
Yes,
Keeble?
He'd call her every night, and he'd give her the news about what was going on, how many baptisms he had, and he wanted to know what she was doing, and it was just the love there between them, you know.
And so you were privileged to hear him preach on several occasions?
Yes,
Do you remember how old you were when he died, passed away?
I think about 18.
18 years of age. Mm-hmm. Now, your husband, Clinton, never got to meet him.
Never got to meet him. He regrets it to this day.
Yeah. And that's sad because he's such a great man, and here's someone who would have played a big part in your life, and I know Marshall would have been interested in that.
He would have, because he used to say, oh, I can't wait for us to have black doctors in the Church of Christ and a hospital that's run by the Churches of Christ. I said, well, why? He said, because when a doctor, this Church of Christ gives you a shot, it won't hurt as bad.
You know, Marshall was often mistreated. by white people, and we're sorry about that. Did you ever hear him speak of that and tell you how you ought to behave?
He would always say you'd have to move on.
Have to move on.
And the one thing you couldn't do was to hate. And he didn't allow things to drag him that low that he would develop resentment. And he wouldn't allow us to do that. But he saw it as it was, but he knew the impact he had and on society and the example he led. So he moved and rose above it. And he taught us to do the same.
Yeah.
But always to be aware that it existed.
That's right. Tell me about his death. I know that had to break your heart. Tell me.
Well, he had just gotten back from Detroit, and I think they were honoring him with something. And when he came home, he and my grandmother spent a busy day that day. And she often said of all days, they did so many things. They went to the cleaners. I think they talked to somebody about the yard, just did a lot of things. And at the end of the day, he sat down on the couch and he died. He just kind of slumped over and died.
Did I understand you to say earlier that he was supposed to pick you up at school?
Yeah, and my husband was going to come out that evening and meet him. And he always said he wanted to be busy until the Lord, came. And he would always be dressed with a suit and tie on every day, even after he had sort of retired and the NCI had closed. And I would say, Pop, why are you dressed and you have your hats? I always kept his hat on the table. He says, Gwen, I'm ready to go wherever the Lord sends, so I'm going to be ready.
Now, staying in the home with him a whole lot, you probably knew his favorite food, didn't you?
Yeah, it was cheese and crackers.
Cheese and crackers. Why was it cheese and crackers?
Well, he just liked cheese and crackers, and he said so often he would travel, and he would have to eat things that he could just carry with him. And he would always pick up some cheese and crackers, and my grandmother would fuss because he had this little knife that he would cut his toenails with, and he would use that to cut the cheese, and she'd say, Papa, please don't do that. But always convenient, anything so he could just get through eating and start studying to get ready for his sermon.
Yeah. Did he ever tell you about his trip to Africa?
Oh yeah, he came back and he said, Gwen, I'm chief now. You have to call me Chief Keeble. And he loved for us to tease him about that. Yeah. He loved that trip.
Did you, as you was around Brother Marshall Keeble, did you understand at that time how great the man really was?
No, and he used to tell my sister and I, after I'm gone, my name is going to go on, After I'm sleeping beneath the sods, he used to say the sods, my name would go on, and my sister and I would say, yeah, right. We had no idea.
Yeah, and who'd ever thought, he died in 1968. Here we are, 2002.
Yeah.
And guess who we're talking about?
Exactly.
Marshall Keeble. Exactly. And that's what he said. He said his name would live on. And it lives on because of his love for God and his love for fellow man.
It's true.
What was his scariest moment?
Well, he said he was preaching, and he had his preacher boys with him. And Fred Gray got very sick, and he said he developed a fever, and he couldn't get that fever down. And his remedy was turpentine and sugar. He thought that could cure anything. And he said Fred would not respond. So he wrapped Fred up in a bunch of sheets, and he said he greased them down. This was his quote. And he said, I prayed all night, and somehow or another the Lord broke Fred's fever. And he said, but I was really afraid because he said I had a good meeting, and I wanted to continue that meeting, but I also had a sick boy with me that needed attention. And he said, but the Lord blessed us, and Fred got better. But he said, I was so afraid.
Did Brother Keeble ever try to push you in the direction of marrying a preacher?
No, he would tease me all the time and say this. He would pick somebody out and say, that's going to be your boyfriend. He joked a lot, but he never did.
Yeah. He knew about your dating Clinton, right? He just never met him.
And I don't think he knew that. I hadn't got a chance to tell him a lot about it, but my grandmother knew.
Oh, she knew.
Oh, yeah, she knew.
Yeah. So when Brother Keeble was gone, you stayed there and you helped to encourage Sister Laura.
Yeah.
Wow, he was gone.
All the time.
Yeah. She, I know, missed him a whole lot as much as he was gone.
Yeah.
But it was good to have somebody there in the home.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have any other great stories about Marshall Keeble you'd like to share with us?
Well, right I think when they moved into their home, the interstate took their first house, so they had to move. And they had a garage. And they didn't have garage door openers, were just becoming popular, and they didn't have one. And after he'd come out from a meeting or church at night, sometimes it'd be raining, and he'd say, "Gwen, nobody can let a garage door up like you." And he was always, I said, now here he is controlling me to get me to let this door up in the rain. And I'd run and let it up and jump back in the car, and he says, "Ooh, oh, it's amazing how you can let that door up." He was just always encouraging and funny and humorous.
Yeah. Well, it sure has been a joy to be with you.
Thank you.
And we can see that the influence of Marshall Keeble lives on through his children, grandchildren, and others that he influenced, both black and white. We shall ever be indebted to this great man.
This is a production of World Video Bible School. To God be the glory.